The scream came first. Not a child's scream, a mother's. Sharp, startled, and furious. By the time neighbors stepped onto their porches that June morning in Maple Ridge Estates, they saw the pieces: a crushed folding table, a bright yellow sign ripped in half, and a small pitcher of lemonade spilled across the driveway like melted sunlight. At the center of it all was Evelyn Marks, the HOA's vice president. 61 years old, gray blonde hair swept into a perfect bun, linen pants spotless despite the chaos. She held a clipboard in one hand and a trash bag in the other. "Unlicensed commerce," she was saying, her voice taut with moral certainty. "Rules are rules." Beside her stood Lena Brooks, 33, still in her work scrubs from the night shift at the county hospital. Her face was pale with disbelief. Her son Eli, just 9 years old, clung to her leg, his Superman apron stained with lemon pulp. "It's a kid's lemonade stand." Lena shouted, "You didn't have to." "Ma'am," Evelyn cut in, "you signed the bylaws when you moved here." Phones were already out. One neighbor whispered, "She's really throwing away?" Another, "Only Evelyn." No one yet realized that this little standoff on Birchleaf Lane would uncover a secret buried beneath Maple Ridge itself. A secret that had nothing to do with lemonade. Maple Ridge Estates was the kind of subdivision real estate agents sold as a promise. Brick facades, trim lawns, HOA newsletters titled Community Harmony. Every 4th of July, kids decorated bikes for the parade, and the board president gave speeches about preserving standards. Evelyn Marks had lived there for 22 years. She joined the HOA after her husband died. Order gave her purpose. She knew every house number, every dog's name, and every rule, including the one about unapproved sales activities. Lena Brooks had moved in just 8 months earlier. A single mother, ER nurse, juggling bills and exhaustion. She rented a small duplex at the edge of the community, the part Evelyn called the transitional strip. Eli was her heart, bright, curious, obsessed with science kits and YouTube DIYs. When school let out, he wanted to earn money for a telescope, so he built a stand out of old pallets, painted a sign that said Eli's Fresh Lemonade, 50 cents, and set it up at the end of their driveway. The first day went well. Neighbors smiled. A UPS driver bought 2 cups. For a while, life felt normal, until Evelyn Marks drove by. At 9:42 a.m., Officer Grant Meadows of the Maple County Sheriff's Department received a dispatch. Dispute between residents. Possible vandalism, no injuries. By the time he arrived, Evelyn was calmly sweeping glass off the curb, her clipboard balanced against her hip. She'd already filed a complaint through the HOA's private security line. "Officer, the child was operating without a permit," she said before he even parked. "Ma'am, that's not exactly. I have photographic proof. And this," she pointed to a stack of papers, "is the violation notice I issued." Lena stood a few feet away, trembling, holding Eli's broken pitcher like evidence. "She just walked up and started throwing things," Lena said. "Didn't even talk to us first." Grant Meadows had been through enough suburban disputes to know the script. HOA versus homeowner. He'd learned that sometimes, beneath all the bylaws, real ugliness festered: pride, envy, prejudice. He took both statements. On his body cam footage, Evelyn looks straight into the lens and says, "If you let one person break the rules, officer, the whole community falls apart." Later, that quote will be replayed on every news channel in the state. A neighbor, Toby Wells, had filmed the entire confrontation on his phone. Within hours, the clip hit Facebook, then Reddit. HOA Karen destroys kids' lemonade stand. In 24 hours, it had 2 million views. The internet chose its villain. Evelyn Marks' face, sharp-jawed, stone-eyed, became a meme. Her quote, "Rules are rules," was remixed into TikToks and parody songs. But the backlash was just beginning. Someone dug through public records and found that Maple Ridge's HOA collected unusually high beautification fees. Another post showed that several residents had been fined for trivial things: a welcome mat, a missing shutter. People started asking, where does all that money go? 3 nights after the video went viral, Lena received an anonymous email. Subject: They did this before. Body, check lot 19's history. Look for the 2018 audit. Don't trust the board. There was no signature, only an attachment, a scanned HOA meeting note referencing maintenance fund reallocation. Lena didn't understand what it meant, but she printed it and drove to the sheriff's office. Officer Meadows agreed to take a look. What he found made his stomach knot. The HOA's fund for community maintenance, over $420,000 collected in the past 5 years, had no listed vendor receipts. Somebody's skimming, he muttered, but he couldn't prove who. Yet, the next morning, as Lena left for work, her elderly neighbor Mr. Dorsey stopped her. "You remind me of my daughter," he said softly. "Don't let them scare you." He leaned closer. "That board, they don't want you asking questions. The last guy who did, his house caught fire." Lena froze. "What?" "Lot 19. That's what they mean by it. Look it up." That night, she did. The owner of Lot 19, a man named Howard Kane, had filed a lawsuit against the HOA in 2018, then withdrawn it after settlement. 2 months later, his garage burned down in an electrical accident. He moved away, except there was no record of where he'd moved. His forwarding address was sealed. Behind closed doors, the HOA board met in the clubhouse. 5 members sat around a mahogany table under a chandelier that hummed faintly. Evelyn Marks presided, flanked by Treasurer Paul Hendricks, Secretary Marla Jensen, and 2 silent committee members. "The internet thinks we're monsters," Marla said. "We're getting threats." "It'll blow over," Evelyn replied. "We'll issue a statement." "What about the records?" Paul asked. "If the sheriff digs." "Then we remind him the HOA has legal immunity under state charter, and we make sure the minutes are clean." But Paul wasn't convinced. He'd seen something Evelyn hadn't noticed, an email forwarded accidentally to his private account from Marla, containing a single line. "The Foundation's project is compromised." He didn't know it yet, but Foundation wasn't about concrete. It was the name of a hidden fund, one that would soon unravel everything. While the adults argued, Eli kept drawing. He drew his lemonade stand, his mom, and the lady who destroyed it. Then, one evening, he brought a crayon-colored sheet to Lena. "Mom, look, I drew what was under the clubhouse." "What do you mean, under?" "When I went to pick up the cones after the fireworks last week, I saw a big hole behind it. It smelled funny, like paint and something rotten." Lena's blood ran cold. Because the HOA clubhouse sat on the same land that used to be an old Maple County storage depot, rumored to have been a chemical site before redevelopment. If the HOA had been dumping or hiding something there, the stakes weren't just financial. They were criminal. Officer Meadows received a plain manila envelope at the station mailbox. Inside were photocopies of invoices, all addressed to Maple Ridge Beautification Fund, each for soil containment services. The vendor listed: Greenfield Environmental, dissolved 2016. The signatures: Evelyn Marks and Paul Hendricks. Grant Meadows stared at them for a long time. If those invoices were real, Evelyn had approved payments to a non-existent company, and that meant fraud. He requested a search warrant for the HOA office. The request came back, delayed for review. 2 days later, his supervisor warned him to back off the Maple Ridge case. Someone higher up had made a call. Lena came home to find a note taped to her door. "Stop digging, nurse girl. Or the next thing we shut down won't be lemonade." Her hands shook as she showed it to Grant. "They're watching me," she whispered. "Then let's give them a reason to." He installed a small camera by her porch light. That night, it recorded a car parking across the street for exactly 18 minutes. The driver never got out. License plate lookup: E. Marks, registered Lexus SUV. When the sheriff's office stalled, Grant Meadows reached out to Nora Klein, an investigative reporter known for exposing small-town corruption. She met him at a diner off the interstate. "I've seen HOA's cookbooks before," Nora said, sipping black coffee. "But this looks bigger. There's money missing, fake vendors, intimidation. And now a viral video." She smiled grimly. "That's leverage. They plan to publish a story within the month." But 2 nights later, the diner where they'd met burned down in an unexplained kitchen fire. No fatalities, but the surveillance DVR was gone. Evelyn Mark's facade began to crack. She stopped going to yoga, stopped answering bored emails. When Marla Jensen visited her home, she found Evelyn pacing, muttering. "They think I don't remember," Evelyn said. "But I kept copies. I know what we buried." Marla froze. "Buried what?" Evelyn looked at her sharply. "It's not about the money anymore. It's about the foundation." Marla backed away slowly. By the next morning, Evelyn was gone. Her car was found abandoned near the old storage depot. Her phone and purse were inside. Grant Meadows convinced a county judge to authorize a limited ground scan of the clubhouse property. The radar picked up irregular voids beneath the foundation, rectangular, metallic. When a hazmat crew broke through the concrete, they found 3 rusted barrels wrapped in black tarp. The labels had corroded, but one word was still visible: toxic. Inside one of the barrels, fragments of paperwork soaked in chemicals. The only legible piece read, "Greenfield Foundation, Phase 2, the same fake company." And beneath the barrels, something else glinted. A child's bicycle wheel, half buried in the dirt. Grant stepped back, breath catching. "Oh, God." When Lena saw the news crews outside the clubhouse, she thought it was finally over. But that night, Eli woke up screaming. "She was there," he cried. "The lady from the stand. She was there when I looked in the hole." Lena tried to calm him. "You're dreaming." "No." She told someone to cover it. She said, "No one can see what's left." And that's when Lena realized Evelyn Marks hadn't destroyed the lemonade stand because of rules. She destroyed it because Eli had set up on the same spot where the pipeline to those buried barrels ran. The stand wasn't the problem. What lay beneath it was. 2 days later, Grant Meadows received another envelope, postmarked before Evelyn disappeared. Inside was a folded note written in tight cursive. "If you found the barrels, you'll understand why they silenced Howard Kane. The foundation isn't dead. It's expanding. The next phase begins at Pinewood Hills. Don't trust anyone on the board, especially Paul." And taped to the bottom of the letter was a small glass jar filled with pale yellow liquid. A tag on the lid read, "Sample A lemonade." Grant turned the jar in his hand. The fluid shimmered faintly green. He looked up at Lena, standing across the room. "What is that?" she whispered. "If I'm right," he said, "it's not lemonade." The hazmat trucks left Maple Ridge before dawn, flashing lights fading into gray fog. Sheriff's deputies kept everyone away from the Corden clubhouse, but by mid-morning satellite news vans were already parked along Birchleaf Lane. Officer Grant Meadows stood by the yellow tape, coffee cooling in his hand. Inside those rusted barrels, the EPA team had found traces of methyl trichloroethylene, a solvent banned since the 1980s. No one could explain how it ended up beneath a suburban HOA lot. That site used to be county property, a state inspector told him. Somebody bought a liability with the land and buried the evidence. Grant's stomach turned. And the paperwork leads to the HOA's fund. When investigators tried to contact Paul Hendricks, Maple Ridge's treasurer, his phone went straight to voicemail. His house looked untouched, mail neatly stacked. Car still in the driveway, but Paul himself had vanished. On his kitchen table sat a banker's box labeled Greenfield Archives, do not shred. Inside, decades-old purchase ledgers from a dissolved company once contracted by the county. At the bottom lay a thumb drive taped to an index card, in shaky handwriting. If you're reading this, it's already started again. The drive contained a spreadsheet listing multiple properties across the state, every one owned by different HOAs connected through a parent entity, the Greenfield Foundation Trust. The Maple Ridge HOA wasn't unique. It was one cell of a network. Lena Brooks sat at her kitchen table watching Eli pour cereal, pretending life was normal. But she couldn't ignore what Grant had told her. The barrels had leaked trace contaminants into groundwater. "That's why the grass behind the clubhouse never grows right," she whispered. She filed for a temporary relocation order. The HOA board, now headless without Evelyn and Paul, refused. That night, Lena received another anonymous email. Subject: "You're on the list." Body. Pinewood Hills welcomes new development managers. They're like nurses. She deleted it, heart racing. Nora Klein, the investigative journalist, met Grant again in a diner 2 counties away. This one's still standing. She'd tracked Greenfield's filings and found something astonishing. The foundation operated through a federal environmental cleanup grant. Essentially, the HOAs were being reimbursed by taxpayers to remediate toxic land, the same land they secretly dumped waste on. They poison it, then get paid to fix it, Nora said. A perpetual business model built on contamination. Grant leaned back. Evelyn called to the foundation. Now we know why. 3 weeks after her disappearance, Evelyn Marks walked into the sheriff's office wearing mud-stained loafers and a blank stare. She asked for Grant by name. In the interview room, she whispered, "You think I buried the barrels? I didn't. I was burying what was inside them." Grant frowned. "Chemicals." She shook her head. "Records. Names. There was a child. A test site. We had to cover it before they came back." "Who's they?" "The foundation." It was never just an HOA. Before he could press her further, Evelyn seized his pen and scrawled an address on the table. Pinewood Hills Recreation Center. Then she smiled sadly. "You'll see the playground. That's where they moved it." Moments later, she went into cardiac arrest. Autopsy later revealed digitalis, a heart medication, in lethal dose. Grant and Nora drove to Pinewood Hills, another pristine subdivision 40 miles east. Children played under the blazing sun. Everything looked ordinary, except for the faint metallic smell near the sandbox. Using a portable scanner borrowed from the EPA, Grant detected the same chemical signature as the Maple Ridge barrels beneath the soil. Nora filmed quietly. "If this is contamination, there are dozens of kids playing on it," she said. They confronted the HOA president, Janet Cole, who smiled with the brittle calm of someone used to winning arguments. "You need to leave. You have no jurisdiction here." When Grant mentioned Evelyn Marks, her smile faltered. "Evelyn talked too much," she said, and turned away. Late that night, they broke into the Pinewood Hills clubhouse. Behind the fitness center, they found a locked door labeled maintenance. Inside, metal filing cabinets identical to Maple Ridge's, and one open laptop still logged in. The screen displayed an internal dashboard. Greenfield Foundation portal. Phase 3 initiation. Sites activated. Maple Ridge, Pinewood Hills, Rosewater Creek, Hollow Pines. Asset control. Children's community engagement programs ***. Grant felt a chill. They're using neighborhood programs to test exposure. Nora copied every file. But as they left, motion sensors flicked on, red dots sweeping the hallway. "They know we're here," Nora hissed. By the time they hit the freeway, headlights appeared in the rear-view mirror. Close, too close. A black SUV tailed them for miles before veering off toward Maple Ridge. Grant dropped Nora at a motel and doubled back. When he reached Lena's house, her porch light was shattered, the camera he'd installed torn down. Inside, Eli's drawings lay scattered across the floor. All of them new, all of them showing the same thing. Underground barrels, a playground, and a symbol. 3 interlocking triangles labeled FFF. In one drawing, a stick figure in a suit watched from behind a tree. At dawn, an email arrived from Paul Hendricks' account. Timestamped 3 hours after he'd officially been declared missing. Subject: the lemonade sample. Body: test the jar. You'll find the same compound we sprayed at Pinewood. It was never about the drink. They needed to see how it spreads. Attached: a lab photo of a glass jar glowing faintly green. Grant forwarded it to the state lab. Within hours, the result came back. The liquid contained a modified pesticide, once used in military soil sterilization tests. Illegal for civilian use. 2 nights later, Lena woke to footsteps. She grabbed her phone, no signal. The power was out. A shadow moved past the hallway. Then a voice: "You shouldn't have kept the jar." She screamed. The intruder fled through the back door. When Grant arrived minutes later, they found muddy footprints leading to a storm drain behind the house, the same drain that connected to the clubhouse runoff system. Someone had come from underground. Evelyn Marks' funeral drew a small crowd. Half the HOA board didn't show. Those who did looked terrified. During the service, Nora slipped Grant a flash drive. "It's from her safety deposit box," she whispered. "Dated 10 years ago." Inside were old meeting minutes from Maple Ridge's construction phase. Back when Evelyn wasn't on the board yet. One page stood out. Project Lemonade, pilot run successful. Toxin dilution achieved through citrus acid medium. Grant read it twice. The lemonade was never a stand. It was the original code name for chemical testing in consumer form. That evening, Eli complained of stomach pains and nausea. Hospital tests showed traces of chlorinated solvents in his bloodstream. Lena collapsed beside his bed. From the lemonade? From the yard? Doctors couldn't say. Grant paced the corridor, rage boiling. He knew now why Evelyn had panicked that first day. The soil beneath Eli's stand was tainted. The child had dug where they buried their past. Nora went public with the story. Her article, The Greenfield Conspiracy, exploded online. Within hours, her website crashed from traffic. Anonymous sources sent her dozens of leaked files. Contract between state officials and Greenfield Foundation Trust. Some documents were signed by a name never before mentioned. Arthur M. Coleman, CEO of Coleman Environmental Solutions. When Grant looked up the address, his jaw tightened. Coleman was Janet Cole's husband, the HOA president of Pinewood Hills. Acting on a tip, Grant and a federal EPA team raided an abandoned warehouse registered to Coleman Environmental. Inside, they found rows of drums labeled Phase 4 and refrigerated crates marked biological culture samples. C. Nora filmed everything. When they opened one crate, a sour chemical odor filled the room. Inside were sealed bags of soil, each tagged with coordinates matching suburban developments across the state. On one bag was a child sticker, Superman logo, like the one on Eli's apron. Grant swore under his breath. They were tracking exposure through kids. Hours later, as Nora uploaded footage to cloud storage, her screen went black. A message appeared. Phase 3 cannot be stopped. Check your lemon trees. She rushed outside to her backyard. Every tree in her small orchard had a fresh white tag stapled to its trunk. The same triangle symbol, FFF. Grant called a superior to report the warehouse find. Static answered. Then a familiar voice, "Cool," measured. "Officer Meadows, this is Director Coleman. Stand down. The EPA has assumed control. You've done enough." The line went dead. Grant gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles bled. He understood now. Coleman was a foundation. Every investigation stopped where his name began. That night, as rain pounded the freeway, Grant drove back toward Maple Ridge. His headlights caught a figure standing under the overpass, a woman in a hooded coat waving a flashlight. It was Marla Jensen, the former HOA secretary. She looked so terrified. "They found me," she cried. "They know you opened the warehouse. And Eli is not safe. There's another site. It's already active." Lightning flashed. Behind her, the black SUV appeared again, rolling out from the shadows. Grant reached for his gun. Marla screamed, "Under the bridge, there's a door." The SUV sped forward. Headlights blinded them. Grant lunged to push her aside as metal collided with concrete. The world erupted in glass and rain. When the SUV hit, the sound echoed under the bridge like thunder trapped in concrete. Grant Meadows tasted blood and rain. His headlights flickered out, leaving only the orange glow of the highway above. Marla Jensen lay sprawled against a guardrail, half conscious. The black SUV had vanished, its tires hissing away into the storm. Grant dragged her into the shadows. Her coat was torn, and on her wrist was a plastic band with the Greenfield logo, the kind used in chemical sites to mark authorized staff. "They took me," she gasped, "made me rewrite the minutes, said it was all for safety." "Safety from what?" "The groundwater," she whispered. "The first test failed. The kids got sick." Then her eyes rolled back. Grant followed the narrow runoff path beneath the bridge until he found a steel hatch set into the concrete. Maintenance Tunnel 13. The padlock had been freshly cut. He pried it open and descended. The tunnel smelled of damp earth and solvents. After 50 yards, a passage widened into a low chamber lit by flickering fluorescence. On one wall hung a corroded sign, Project Lemonade, Site Origin A. Stacks of barrels lined the walls, newer than the ones unearthed at Maple Ridge. Each bore the F-triangle emblem and a printed line of text, Citrus Medium Phase 2. Grant filmed everything with his body cam. In the center stood a metal table covered with clear jars of cloudy liquid, identical to the one Evelyn Marks had mailed before her death. Grant uploaded the video to a private server and called Nora Klein. When she arrived hours later, dripping from rain, she stared at the footage, pale. "This isn't chemical dumping," she said. "It's bioremediation testing, and they're using kids' lemonade stands as exposure points." The formula was designed to neutralize toxic soil, but the test version released vapors that attacked the nervous system. Phase 2 had shifted from cleaning land to modifying it, and living tissue nearby. Grant's jaw tightened. Eli was a control group. At Maple County Hospital, Lena Brooks refused to leave Eli's bedside. The doctor still couldn't explain his seizures. When a nurse handed her Eli's personal items, Lena found a small glass marble he'd picked up near the clubhouse months ago. It glowed faintly under the light. She showed it to the attending physician. He frowned. "That's not glass. That's polymer resin, industrial." Lena realized her son had been playing with residue from the buried sites. She called Grant. Whatever they buried, it's still spreading. That night, as rain tapered into mist, a stranger arrived at the hospital. A woman in a gray suit with an EPA badge. She introduced herself as Dr. Alyssa Coleman. "I'm here on behalf of the Environmental Safety Commission," she said. "We're transferring Eli to a federal medical facility for specialized care." Lena hesitated. "Who sent you?" "Director Coleman." Grant arrived minutes later and caught the woman leaving with a briefcase. Her ID was fake. He chased her into the parking lot, but the license plate of her car traced back to Coleman Environmental Solutions. Grant's phone buzzed. "Unknown number." "You opened the wrong door," said a rasping voice. "It's Paul Hendricks." Paul claimed he'd escaped the Foundation after faking his disappearance. He was hiding near Pinewood Hills and agreed to meet. Grant drove out at dawn. He found Paul holed up in a derelict motel room, gaunt and trembling. They used HOA charters to launder grants. Paul said, "Every subdivision you see with matching fountains and parks, that's Phase 3 infrastructure. The chemicals are stored in irrigation systems. When the sprinklers run, they dose the soil." He handed Grant a folded blueprint stamped Greenfield Trust, Phase 4/National Deployment. Before Grant could question him, the window shattered. A silent shot caught Paul in the chest. Grant ducked, returning fire, but the shooter was gone. Paul bled out on the carpet, whispering, "Check the school wells. The kids drink it every day." Nora traced the coordinates on Paul's blueprint. They led to Pinewood Elementary, built just a year earlier. They sneaked in after hours. The basement maintenance room housed a water filtration system newer than the rest of the school. On the pipes, a small sticker with the F-triangle logo. Nora sampled the water. The chemical reading spiked. "They've been distributing it through the schools," she said. "Micro-exposure trials." Suddenly, footsteps echoed upstairs. Security. Grant and Nora hid behind equipment as two men in dark uniforms entered, one speaking quietly into a radio. "Confirming containment of Site Epsilon. No media presence." The men left. Nora exhaled shakily. "They're talking in code like it's military." They discovered a steel cabinet welded shut. Grant used a crowbar. Inside were plastic binders labeled Lemonade Phase I, Child Interaction Metrics, Pinewood Hills Soil Absorption Study, Community Event Engagement Reports. Each binder contained surveillance photos, families hosting bake sales, yard days, lemonade stands, annotated with chemical readings. Nora's voice shook. They've been testing on entire neighborhoods without consent. She filmed everything. As they exited through the back corridor, an alarm wailed. Red light strobed. A countdown voice crackled from the intercom. "Containment breach, evacuate." Grant grabbed Nora and sprinted as the filtration tanks ruptured behind them, releasing yellow vapor that burned their throats. They burst out into the night. The building erupted in a dull, controlled blast, not random, but self-destructed. Someone wanted the evidence gone. The next day, federal agents swarmed Pinewood Elementary. The official story, gas leak. Grant and Nora met in a motel on the county line. Nora uploaded surviving footage to a hidden server. Evelyn Marks was trying to stop Phase 2, Nora said. She didn't destroy a kid stand because of rules. She was erasing the evidence of what leaked into his lemons. Grant stared at the drive. And Coleman's company still runs every HOA from here to Austin. They knew too much and not enough. That night, Lena received a phone call from a number labeled East Marks Estate. A woman's voice spoke softly. Your son isn't in the hospital anymore. They moved him to Facility 9. Then the line went dead. Grant traced a signal, routed through a government VPN originating from Coleman Environmental Headquarters. Grant and Nora drove to coordinates in rural Oklahoma, an old airfield fenced off with EPA authorized personnel only signs. Inside Hangar B, rows of hospital beds stretched under fluorescent lights. Children slept under clear domes connected to monitor machines. Eli was among them. Lena broke down, clinging to him as alarms blared. A voice over the PA system said, "Unauthorized entry detected. Secure the samples." Grant pulled his gun. Nora downloaded files from the nearest terminal. Project Lemonade, Phase V/behavioral effects testing. They fought their way out amid flashing strobes. Nora drove the getaway van while Grant held off pursuing guards. On the highway, Eli stirred awake, whispering, "Mom, they said we make the plants grow faster." Lena held him close, realizing he'd been exposed to something altering his metabolism. His skin glowed faintly under UV light. "They changed him," she whispered. Nora published the Facility 9 footage through encrypted networks. The story went viral. Secret HOA program experimented on children. Coleman Environmental denied everything. The EPA called it a hoax. But public outrage exploded. Protesters gathered outside HOA offices statewide. That night, Grant's phone buzzed again, an unknown number sending coordinates and a message. "You still don't know who funds them. Meet me where it began." Attached, a photo of the same maintenance tunnel sign, but the label now read Project Citrus, Phase 0/military contract. Grant returned alone to the underbridge tunnel. Deeper in, behind a rusted bulkhead, he found a bunker filled with decades-old filing cabinets marked Department of Defense, Environmental Division 1983. The files told a grim origin. Project Citrus was a Cold War bioremediation experiment to create bacteria that neutralized nuclear waste. When the project failed, the culture mutated, still capable of eating toxins, but also generating neuroactive byproducts. The government buried the sites and quietly privatized the technology under new names: Greenfield Foundation, Coleman Environmental, and later, HOAs built over those same grounds. When Grant surfaced, Nora was gone. Her motel room stripped bare, laptop missing. A news alert pinged. Investigative journalist Nora Klein dies in apparent accident. Grant didn't believe it. The video of her car wreck showed no fire damage, just an empty shell. Hours later, he received an encrypted file from her cloud backup. Inside, a single clip of Nora alive whispering, "If you're seeing this, they made me disappear." The next phase starts in Florida. They're calling it the Sunshine Initiative. 2 weeks later, Lena watched news coverage of a new luxury development breaking ground near the Gulf Coast. Sunshine Harbor Residences. At the ribbon cutting stood Arthur Coleman, smiling beside state officials. Behind him, a banner with 3 familiar triangles. Grant drove south, the jar of lemonade glowing faintly on his dashboard. As he crossed the bridge into Florida, his radio crackled with a child's voice, Eli's, though his phone was off. "Mr. Grant," the voice said softly, "they're planting the lemons again." Grant's eyes widened. He gripped the wheel. In the distance, rows of identical houses shimmered in the heat, each yard lined with brand new lemon trees. The Florida sun burned bright over Sunshine Harbor residences, a brand new community gleaming with pastel houses, palm-lined sidewalks, and everywhere, young lemon trees planted in perfect symmetry. Officer Grant Meadows pulled up in an unmarked sedan, exhaustion etched into his face. In the passenger seat sat Lena Brooks, her son Eli sleeping fitfully in the back. They had driven 15 hours from Oklahoma, following the trail of Arthur Coleman and his company's newest development, Phase 6 of Project Citrus. Grant killed the engine. "This is where it ends," he muttered. Inside the gated community's welcome office, smiling agents handed out fresh lemonade to prospective buyers. The slogan printed on every cup, "Taste the future, live bright." Lena's hand shook as she accepted a sample cup. The liquid shimmered faintly green in the light. Grant set a portable tester into the drink. The reading spiked. Traces of methylated bacterial enzymes, the same signature from Maple Ridge. "They're still using it," he whispered. "And now they're selling homes on top of it," Lena replied. That afternoon, a ribbon-cutting ceremony gathered local officials and news crews. Standing center stage was Arthur M. Coleman, immaculate white suit, bronze tan, easy charm. "Today we open a community that gives back to the land," he declared. "Clean soil, clean living, our legacy to America's future." The crowd applauded. Behind him, a row of children in Sunshine Harbor uniforms held lemonade cups for the cameras. Grant filmed quietly from the crowd. When Coleman's eyes met his, the developer's smile didn't falter, but a muscle twitched near his jaw. That night, Grant and Lena followed a maintenance van into a restricted area behind the model homes. They found a service tunnel identical to the ones beneath Maple Ridge. Inside, stainless steel tanks humming, labeled Citrus Serum B3, Active Culture. A control panel logged real-time data on nutrient flow and human proximity response. "They've automated exposure," Grant said. "The closer people live, the more it spreads." Lena stared at a row of children's toys stacked in the corner, souvenirs used for calibration tests. A tag read, "E. Brooks, sample recovered." Nora Klein's encrypted drive had survived. Grant used a hidden uplink to stream live footage from the Sunshine Harbor tanks directly to her old news channel's backup server. Within minutes, the feed went viral. Government-backed developer using toxic bioserum in new Florida homes. Crowds gathered outside the gates by dawn. Coleman called a press conference. "Lies from disgruntled former officers," he said smoothly. "Our serum is a patented BioClean technology, completely safe." But the next morning, fish floated dead along the community lake. Federal agents descended. Coleman vanished in the chaos, escaping toward a private airstrip. Grant chased him through back roads until the storm clouds broke over the coast. At the airfield's edge, Coleman boarded a waiting helicopter. "You can't stop progress, officer," he shouted over the rotor wash. "People want clean land. They don't care what it costs." "You mean who it costs?" Grant shot back. He fired one round at the fuel line. The explosion rocked the pad. The chopper lurched and came down hard in a burst of fire and metal. When the flames died, only wreckage remained. Weeks later, Grant testified before a federal committee. The inquiry confirmed that Project Citrus had operated for 35 years under changing names, using HOA networks to distribute experimental soil cultures. Thousands of homes sat on contaminated land. Multiple agencies face indictment. Eli recovered slowly but carried scars. Chronic nerve damage, photosensitive skin. Lena left nursing to join environmental advocacy work. Grant resigned from the force. "You still don't know who funds them. Meet me where it began." Attached, a photo of the same maintenance tunnel sign, but the label now read Project Citrus, Phase 0/military contract. Grant returned alone to the underbridge tunnel. Deeper in, behind a rusted bulkhead, he found a bunker filled with decades-old filing cabinets marked Department of Defense, Environmental Division 1983. The files told a grim origin. Project Citrus was a Cold War bioremediation experiment to create bacteria that neutralized nuclear waste. When the project failed, the culture mutated, still capable of eating toxins, but also generating neuroactive byproducts. The government buried the sites and quietly privatized the technology under new names. Greenfield Foundation, Coleman Environmental, and later, HOAs built over those same grounds. When Grant surfaced, Nora was gone. Her motel room stripped bare, laptop missing. A news alert pinged. Investigative journalist Nora Klein dies in apparent accident. Grant didn't believe it. The video of her car wreck showed no fire damage, just an empty shell. Hours later, he received an encrypted file from her cloud backup. Inside, a single clip of Nora alive whispering, "If you're seeing this, they made me disappear." The next phase starts in Florida. They're calling it the Sunshine Initiative. 2 weeks later, Lena watched news coverage of a new luxury development breaking ground near the Gulf Coast. Sunshine Harbor Residences. At the ribbon cutting stood Arthur Coleman, smiling beside state officials. Behind him, a banner with 3 familiar triangles. Grant drove south, the jar of lemonade glowing faintly on his dashboard. As he crossed the bridge into Florida, his radio crackled with a child's voice, Eli's, though his phone was off. "Mr. Grant," the voice said softly, "they're planting the lemons again." Grant's eyes widened. He gripped the wheel. In the distance, rows of identical houses shimmered in the heat, each yard lined with brand new lemon trees. The Florida sun burned bright over Sunshine Harbor Residences, a brand new community gleaming with pastel houses, palm-lined sidewalks, and everywhere, young lemon trees planted in perfect symmetry. Officer Grant Meadows pulled up in an unmarked sedan, exhaustion etched into his face. In the passenger seat sat Lena Brooks, her son Eli sleeping fitfully in the back. They had driven 15 hours from Oklahoma, following the trail of Arthur Coleman and his company's newest development, Phase 6 of Project Citrus. Grant killed the engine. "This is where it ends," he muttered. Inside the gated community's welcome office, smiling agents handed out fresh lemonade to prospective buyers. The slogan printed on every cup, "Taste the future, live bright." Lena's hand shook as she accepted a sample cup. The liquid shimmered faintly green in the light. Grant set a portable tester into the drink. The reading spiked. Traces of methylated bacterial enzymes, the same signature from Maple Ridge. "They're still using it," he whispered. "And now they're selling homes on top of it," Lena replied. That afternoon, a ribbon-cutting ceremony gathered local officials and news crews. Standing center stage was Arthur M. Coleman, immaculate white suit, bronze tan, easy charm. "Today we open a community that gives back to the land," he declared. "Clean soil, clean living, our legacy to America's future." The crowd applauded. Behind him, a row of children in Sunshine Harbor uniforms held lemonade cups for the cameras. Grant filmed quietly from the crowd. When Coleman's eyes met his, the developer's smile didn't falter, but a muscle twitched near his jaw. That night, Grant and Lena followed a maintenance van into a restricted area behind the model homes. They found a service tunnel identical to the ones beneath Maple Ridge. Inside, stainless steel tanks humming, labeled Citrus Serum B3, Active Culture. A control panel logged real-time data on nutrient flow and human proximity response. "They've automated exposure," Grant said. "The closer people live, the more it spreads." Lena stared at a row of children's toys stacked in the corner, souvenirs used for calibration tests. A tag read, "E. Brooks, sample recovered." Nora Klein's encrypted drive had survived. Grant used a hidden uplink to stream live footage from the Sunshine Harbor tanks directly to her old news channel's backup server. Within minutes, the feed went viral. Government-backed developer using toxic bioserum in new Florida homes. Crowds gathered outside the gates by dawn. Coleman called a press conference. "Lies from disgruntled former officers," he said smoothly. "Our serum is a patented BioClean technology, completely safe." But the next morning, fish floated dead along the community lake. Federal agents descended. Coleman vanished in the chaos, escaping toward a private airstrip. Grant chased him through back roads until the storm clouds broke over the coast. At the airfield's edge, Coleman boarded a waiting helicopter. "You can't stop progress, officer," he shouted over the rotor wash. "People want clean land. They don't care what it costs." "You mean who it costs?" Grant shot back. He fired one round at the fuel line. The explosion rocked the pad. The chopper lurched and came down hard in a burst of fire and metal. When the flames died, only wreckage remained. Weeks later, Grant testified before a federal committee. The inquiry confirmed that Project Citrus had operated for 35 years under changing names, using HOA networks to distribute experimental soil cultures. Thousands of homes sat on contaminated land. Multiple agencies face indictment. Eli recovered slowly but carried scars. Chronic nerve damage, photosensitive skin. Lena left nursing to join environmental advocacy work. Grant resigned from the force. While cataloging evidence, Grant discovered a sealed envelope marked N, Klein, and Nora's handwriting. Inside, a single flash drive titled Lemonade_Final. He opened it. Nora's recorded voice played. "If this reaches you, it means the Sunshine Initiative has fallen. But remember, they built backups. Every HOA has one storage node. Watch the kids. They're planting lemon trees again. The roots remember." Months passed. Maple Ridge lay abandoned, its lawns overgrown, warning signs staked along the curbs. One evening, Grant visited the site. In the cracked driveway where Eli's lemonade stand once stood, a single lemon sapling grew, bright, defiant. He knelt, touched the soil. It felt warm. From behind, Lena said softly, "They think they can bury everything, but the truth grows back." Grant nodded. That's the thing about roots. They always find daylight. A year later, a small nonprofit released a report showing a 12% spike in cognitive issues among children living in HOA developments built between 1998 and 2019. No company claimed responsibility. Most documents vanished in sealed settlements. But whistleblowers leaked one final memo. Rebranding complete. Future sites will operate under Green Sun Rejuvenation LLC. Target launch, California. The last page bore Coleman's signature, dated 2 weeks before the helicopter crash. It started with a kid's lemonade stand. One small act of defiance against a rule that was never about order. It was about control. The HOA said it was about appearances. The company said it was about cleaning the earth. But sometimes evil hides behind the word improvement. Henry Calhoun had his tractor. Evelyn Marks had her clipboard. And a 9-year-old boy with a pitcher of lemonade revealed what billions in funding tried to hide. The lesson? Never dismiss the small things. The child question, the neighbor's complaint, the crack in the driveway. Because corruption doesn't always come with guns and masks. Sometimes it comes with a smile and a glass of lemonade. Thought balloon, now the question is, if doing what's right meant exposing the place you live, the comfort, the stability, the illusion of safety, would you still pull the plug? Or would you sip the lemonade and pretend everything tastes fine? Moral lesson. Truth, like soil, can be poisoned, but it also heals when someone finally stops watering the lie.